Imagine this. You sell your house, you scrape together every penny you have, you grab your family, and you sail across the ocean to start a new life. You were promised a land where you can harvest crops 3 times a year, and the rivers are literally full of gold. But when the ship docks, you see nothing. No city, no port, no food. Just swamps and malaria-carrying mosquitoes. And your ticket back has already sailed away. This man's name was Gregor MacGregor, and he pulled off arguably the most audacious scam in history. He didn't just cheat people out of money. He sold them a country that wasn't even on the map. Today, I'm going to tell you how one Scotsman fooled stiff British bankers, sent hundreds of people to their deaths in the jungle, and why he got away with it absolutely scot-free. To lie like that and actually be believed, you have to look the part. Gregor MacGregor always wanted to look like a big shot. At 16, he joined the army, fought in Europe, then in Venezuela. He wasn't really a hero, but he was great at smoke and mirrors. The fancy uniform, the medals, the confident voice. In London in the 1820s, that was enough. Plus, he managed to marry a relative of Simon Bolivar, the famous revolutionary in South America. To Londoners, that sounded impressive. Oh, he comes from a good family, and the timing was interesting. The wars with Napoleon were over. The economy was growing, but banks were paying pennies on savings accounts. People were looking for somewhere to invest their money to make a profit. And then MacGregor shows up. He declares, "I'm not just a general anymore. I am a prince." Allegedly, a local king gifted him a territory in Central America, Poyais. In reality, some tribal chief just gave him permission to trade there. But MacGregor went back to London and said, "I have an entire empire over there. How do you sell people something that doesn't exist?" MacGregor approached it systematically. The first, the brochure. He wrote a book under the name of a made-up captain, 350 pages of fairy tales. It said that Poyais had a perfect climate, no diseases, and the soil was so fertile that corn basically grew itself. In reality, it was just sand and jungle. But nobody could check. There was no internet, no Google Maps. The second, faking a government. MacGregor opened a Poyais embassy in London. He drew a flag, designed a coat of arms. He printed his own money, Poyais dollars. He was even handing out titles. He gave some shoemaker the title of official shoemaker to the princess. People saw papers with stamps and believed it. Well, if there's an embassy, there must be a country. The third, playing with the price. He started selling bonds, basically, I owe us, for his country. To get people buying, he hired brokers who would buy these papers themselves, creating the appearance that they were in high demand. Regular people watched and thought, wow, the price is going up. Everyone's buying. I need to get in. Classic pump and dump, and it still works today. But just taking the money wasn't enough for him. MacGregor decided to send people there. And this is where a financial scam turns into a real-life horror story. Next, I'll tell you what happened to those who bought this ticket to paradise. In 1822 and 1823, 2 ships set sail from Britain. On board were about 250 people, doctors, bankers, farmers, families with children. They brought furniture, beautiful clothes, even a grand piano. They thought they were going to a capital city. MacGregor saw them off personally, waving goodbye. He knew he was sending them to nowhere. When they arrived, the captain of the first ship realized there was no port, dumped the people on the beach, and sailed away. The people were left alone. Instead of a city, nothing. No water, no food. They had pockets full of Poyais dollars that MacGregor had exchanged for them before departure. But the local indigenous people looked at this paper like it was trash. They wanted rum or weapons, not waste paper. Then the rains started. Malaria came. People began to die. The diaries of the survivors described terrible things. Yesterday's aristocrats were lying in the mud, too weak to even stand up. No help, no food. Out of 250 people, less than 50 survived. Most of them simply rotted in the jungle. Logic says, when the survivors were rescued and brought back to London, MacGregor should have been torn apart or thrown in jail. But something happened that makes absolutely no sense. I'm about to tell you the craziest twist in this story. When the half-dead survivors returned to London, the newspapers blew up. But here's the paradox. Some of the survivors started defending MacGregor. They blamed the ship captains, the bad weather, competitors who allegedly ruined the plans. It was easier for them to make up an excuse than to admit they gave all their money and health for a fake. And MacGregor, he didn't wait for the police. He fled to Paris. And guess what? He did the exact same thing. He declared Poitiers a republic. Since France is a republic, they'd like that. And started selling shares for a second round. He was only stopped by officials when they started asking why immigrants from this country didn't have passports. He was even put on trial, but his lawyer weaseled out of it, saying, well, the land exists, here's the map. And the fact that the colonists died, well, that's just business risk. Bad luck with the weather. The court found him not guilty. Gregor MacGregor didn't die in prison. He died in his own bed. He returned to Venezuela, where he was reinstated as a general and given a pension. He was buried with full military honors in the main cathedral of Caracas. The president and cabinet ministers walked behind his coffin. He stole millions. He killed hundreds of people, and he walked away clean. Why did it happen like this? Because MacGregor wasn't selling land. He was selling the dream of easy wealth. And people really want to believe in a free lunch. So much so that they are ready to ignore common sense. As long as there are people looking for gold mountains with zero effort, there will always be MacGregors ready to sell them a map. Now, be honest, if you were offered an investment with 300% returns, and it had fancy papers and famous names attached, would you risk a small amount? Type yes or no in the comments.